Hi, today I'd like to narrate a story that happened 21 years ago. It was my first job and it was in those initial days. Usually, before I begin my class every day, I would shed some light on a particular grammar point. On that particular day, I was talking about irregular verbs and I gave a few examples to my students and then I started to discuss that particular lesson. So it was prose. I was teaching a kind of short story, I think, or an essay. I don't remember clearly. But in between, one student raised his hand. I still remember his name. He's Mr. Balakrishnan, and he was a very inquisitive and a curious young man. He asked me, "Sir, what's the past form of welcome?" And I was like dumbstruck. I didn't know the answer, and I told him, "Sorry, Balakrishnan, I couldn't answer this question right now. I have to refer to my dictionary, but my instinct says it's not like come, came, come. It should be welcome, welcomed, welcomed." But I was not sure at that time. I told him I will let you know tomorrow after referring to the dictionary. In those days, we didn't have smartphones. I didn't even have a mobile phone in my hand. So but luckily, after a few minutes, within a few minutes, in the same lesson, in one of the following paragraphs, the paragraphs that followed the word, we found welcome, the past form of the welcome that was used like welcomed. In the sentence it came, and we were all very happy, and that was a very, very important learning point for me. That evening I went home and I started to learn those irregular verbs again. There were around 240 verbs, and I thought, okay, is there any way, why couldn't I remember this? Why couldn't I learn this in all those years of learning English in school, 12 years and 12 plus years, and then in college, during bachelor's, I spent three years, and masters I studied for 2 years, but still I didn't learn all those 240 verbs, and there are three different forms. So why? Because I was not serious. I didn't take them seriously. I didn't realize the importance of those three forms of those irregular verbs, and that's why I didn't learn. It stuck me on that particular day. I realized my mistake, and then I started to learn. I tried to find some methodology, some easy ways to memorize all those words. That's when it struck me, okay, there are lots of similar sounding words, similar spelling and similar pronunciation. So I started to group them, and it was an interesting activity. And for example, cut, 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 put, sit, sit, sit. All these words are like similar sounding words. In the same way, catch, caught, caught, teach, taught, taught, bring, brought, buy, bought. So these are another set of similar sounding words. Like that, I could find many different groups. And from that day onwards, in every one of my classes, I used to ask my students, could you please, I show them these examples and I ask them, could you please group these words? See, that's where the difference between a good learner and an average learner comes. No, everybody wants to learn, but how many of us like to take that extra effort, like to go to that extra mile? So I showed the way, but none of them so far in these 21 years have taken that effort, except one or two students. And recently, day before yesterday, one of my students called Fatma Al-Kindi came to me with this long list. She put these words into 13 groups and one extra group, that is the 14th group, where the irregular verbs do not have any pattern. The verbs that do not have any pattern or any similarity among themselves are collected and put in the 14th group. So I have a list of 14 groups now, thanks to Miss Fatma Al-Kindi, and I have shared it with my group in Englishngo to all my friends, group members over there. So what I would suggest is, initially do not go to that list of verbs, but go and try to take the list from the internet, those 160 to 240 verbs, and try to create your own groups. And this way you will become more conscious about these verbs, and it might stay there in your head, and you should try to use them as much as possible. And another thing, why these verbs are very important, why these verbs are, what are verbs, what are the different kinds of verbs that we are talking about? There are three different kinds of verbs. The first one is be verbs: am, is, are, was, were. These are be verbs. The second type, in my terminology, I name them like these are possessive verbs, has, have, had. And the third kind are called action verbs. That's where this problem of regular and irregular verbs come. So in English, somewhere I read, I think it's my assumption, I'm not very sure, I don't have the exact figures, the language is growing every day, so we don't know how many words or verbs exactly are there in English, but let's assume there are 50,000 words, and out of those 50,000 words, only 240 verbs anywhere on an average are what do you call, it's not an accurate figure. I assume that there are 240 words, verbs that are irregular. So what does irregular mean? For example, educate, educated, educated, publish, published, published, tried, tried, tried. So these are regular verbs. Regular verbs can be very easily converted into their past and past participle form by just adding ed, whereas irregular verbs can't be changed into their past and past participle form by adding ed, because they are irregular, their form changes, they undergo a very big change. For example, go, went, gone, write, wrote, written, sleep, slept, slept, so, see, saw, seen. So all these verbs are called irregular verbs, and they are just 240 in number compared to the 50,000 action verbs. That's huge, and this is tiny, this is very, very little, and this is where the most important point of this discussion comes. You take any paragraph or any passage from any book, magazine or newspaper, take that small paragraph and start underlining all the verbs. You will find, I'm sure, I guarantee you, you will find the percentage of irregular verbs used will be much higher than the percentage of the action verbs, the rest of the 50,000 action verbs in terms of ratio. So out of 50,000, there would be maybe in a paragraph of 5 to 10 words are used from this list of 50,000, whereas from the list of 240 you will find anywhere between 3 to 5 verbs. I'm sure you will find those irregular verbs. So if you do not learn the 3 forms of these irregular verbs, you tend to make a lot of mistakes, and these mistakes would be considered silly and big blunders. So if you want to avoid and reduce your number of mistakes and errors, please learn these words and their 3 different forms. It's just 240 words. Put them in different groups, and if you can't do that, ask me and I will provide it. It is available in the group, it is in the files, and if you want my help, direct message me, then I will try to help you, provide you with a list. But my advice is, it's always try to be on your own. It's very simple, you can do it, and if you have any doubts, you can ask any of your friends who are better than you in English. It's a very simple task. So please do that and enjoy learning. So it doesn't matter where you are now, you should be better than what you are today. So that should be your motto. Do a little, do it every day, do a little bit more every day, challenge yourself, and the sky is the limit. You can, nothing is impossible. You can speak, write, listen, and read well in English. It's possible. If it is possible for me, it should be possible for you also. And I was a late bloomer as far as English is concerned, and I wish you all the best. Have a good day. Take care. Bye bye.